Welcome to the Teen Suicide Prevention Society's show. It's actually called the Suicide Prevention Show. We are here waking up the world. And to help us wake up, not just the world, but wake up to ourselves. Stephanie Duffey is going to take us on the journey to get to know the person in the mirror. So please help me welcome to the studio, Stephanie Duffey. Oh, I'm so excited. Now you're talking to yourself.
Hello, Jackie.
Hello, Stephanie. How are you?
Good. I've been hanging out here watching your speakers, and I am blown away. I'm just blown away.
Oh, I am just delighted that you have had the time to hang out and that you have the time to be with me right now.
Oh, Stephanie. There we go. The gratitude, Jackie, is just unbelievable. Like, my heart is so full listening to them.
I've been really blessed, Stephanie. You're right. Oh boy, this is going to be an interesting session. Okay, so now welcome to Teary-Eyed Tales. There we go. Welcome to Teary-Eyed Tales. Thanks, Katie. Goodbye, Katie.
And you know what, Jackie? I have to say, I think this is the second time in a row you have done this event on a full moon, and full moons tend to bring out our emotions.
You know, the genie, the magic of the scheduling genie. It's, you know, sometimes it's when will this fit on my schedule? And it has been consistently on holidays or full moons. And the next one is no exception. So we're not going to give away the date, but
yeah,
it's always the right time.
Exactly.
Always the right time. So, Stephanie, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jackie.
The person in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
When did you realize that there was a stranger in the mirror?
You know, Jackie, I think for me, kind of the pivotal time, I'm going to say is, I think it was about 36 when my marriage dissolved. Mm-hmm. And I remember, you know, making a key decision. You know, am I going to sink or am I going to swim? What am I going to do? And, you know, even though I'd kind of always wished for kind of the ending of my marriage. We'd been married, I think, for 7 years. So sometimes when you know, when things happen that we wanted, you know, there's still kind of the shock factor. And so, you know, with the ending, what I wasn't prepared for was that it opened up old wounds that weren't yet healed. And yeah, and so I realized that, you know, things needed to change. I needed to figure out who I was. And I always use this as an example with people. You know, in my first few days of being single, it was like, okay, you know, what do I want for dinner, right? It's like, do I want a pizza? It's like, do I even like pizza? I don't know. You know, and if I did, what would I put on it, right? And just the basic things of who am I by myself, right? Because I had always, you know, I was raised and chose to continue that pattern of do for others, you put yourself last. And suddenly it's just, you know, it was me.
There wasn't anybody to put first.
Exactly. And so it's like, oh, you know, this is hard. This is hard. And, you know, prior to that time, I had been a special ed teacher. I'd worked at an alternate school, which I loved because these were teenagers who were deemed with behavioral issues, right? They didn't fit the typical school, so there was room to accommodate their needs. And I just love these kids because they could just be themselves, right? And they expressed themselves and they had a story. Whereas I found being in the regular school system quite boring. And so, what happened was our school district amalgamated. I was sent to an elementary.
What does amalgamated mean for a school district? Sorry, I don't know that one.
Okay, so because of cutbacks, we'll take it, two smaller districts formed one. So some jobs were cut and people needed to be shuffled around. And so I was sent to an elementary school. Well, I didn't enjoy babysitting when I was younger, and this just wasn't going to work for me because I have a strong sense of adventure. So I'd gone into nonprofits, and I worked as a family support worker for it's a local community services to help parents who are struggling with parenting with their children, so that kids could stay in the home and not go into the foster system. And so through my experience there, some people take home cats, find cats, I take home children. So through my experience there, I'd met someone, and I was to do intervention for the weekend, and then get back to them on Monday. Well, that wasn't going to work. So, the ministry decided they were going to put this young girl into the foster care system. Anyways, it was getting late, and there was no bed. So I just said, you know what, can I just take her home? We'll come back the next day and figure it out. So at that time, I was married at that time, and my husband just adored this little girl, and and we decided to apply for fostering. And so that was a huge adventure, and I learned about trauma and the effects of trauma. And no textbook could ever teach me, some of the experiences that I went through, and the stories I heard. And so that really opened up a desire for me to learn about human behavior, in particular trauma, how it affects us, and how can I be of service in that regard? Because I know there were some people on her team, that said, things are going to get worse before they get better. It was just like, no, they cannot, right? And just, recognizing at that time that one of my beliefs that I had learned and was carrying on, that I was giving my power to people in authority. And really struggling at that moment, just not comprehending, but you're an authority and you can't help me. And that was kind of devastating, right? Because it's like, oh my God, I got to figure this out, and I have to figure this out now. So anyways, fast forward, things just kind of went sideways. My ex and I.
You got to translate. Things went sideways. You and your husband have applied for fostering this.
Sorry. Yeah. So we had fostered her. We had fostered this young girl. And so I ended up kicking her out of the house twice on 2 different occasions. So the first time, because my ex had kids, so we had them every second weekend. And it was just causing huge turmoil. And so because my ex wouldn't step up, I did. And, his kids were not an option to not come, right? And I kind of spelled it out for my foster daughter, but because of the trauma, she was testing me. And so, yeah, she went to live with someone else for a few months. And then we thought, okay, well, maybe this will be okay. And that was more short term. So because her mom had instilled a lot of trauma on her, and I was the female caregiver, it was transferred to me. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because it's amazing how we normalize dysfunction. Like it just kind of creeps up on you. And so with her, every month or so, you know, she would go into a rage. And quite often I would have to provoke it because it'd be like a pick, 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 pick. And so I would just kind of have to press some buttons, put her over the edge that she could just full on rage for 20 minutes, you know, and then, you know, verbally spew to me. And I remember one time she was just at me in a full on rage. And I just thought, you know, God help me, right? So I think I just kind of pushed her back. She lost her footing and I got her on the ground. Meanwhile, she thought I was the strongest person. I thought, oh, thank you, because I don't know how to throw a punch, right? And so, yeah, so because of the strain of just kind of everything, and as well, my ex-husband and I weren't the perfect match. Our marriage broke down. But before our marriage broke down, our foster daughter just kind of went to the streets and got into drugs and whatnot. So she wasn't really aware of what was happening. And so that was really traumatic for me.
Were you aware of what was happening with her?
Yeah.
That she was on the streets and
yeah. And you know, for me, yeah, I did not have the energy to fight. You know, I was coping in my own stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, and at that time, you know, I went into some therapy as well as I, you know, was constantly reading books, attending workshops. Like I was into learning. You know, I didn't do super well in school, but, you know, human behavior, this is what I wanted.
Yeah. Trying to figure it out.
Exactly. And so, you know, her and I, we didn't talk for about 10 years. And I've never cut anyone out of my life like that. Like it just didn't make sense to me. However, you know, I think sometimes I feel like, you know, but I need to be the bigger person. And, you know, like, you know, this superwoman mentality, I was just like, I don't have the energy. And so, you know, we didn't talk for about 10 years. And now we're working on a relationship and it's beautiful. And she appreciates me, you know, but she gets it, right? And she appreciates the boundary.
That's really, really key and really cool that you all have reconnected.
Yeah.
And the person in the mirror for you. At some point you woke up and said, who I thought I was isn't who I am.
Exactly. And through that part, it's, you know, struggling with having no contact with someone just, you know, just baffled me. Like I'd heard of people doing that, but I thought, you know, it's like, but she didn't do enough kind of damage to me, right? And I'm thinking, oh my Lord, like, you know, so having to be okay with it because my ex-husband was not okay with my decision. I sat in this alone, even though he was aware that, you know, she would like literally hunt me down. And so just, you know, having that chat in the mirror of I'm okay. You know, it's, I need to trust this is where I'm at. You know, because like I also referenced that, you know, she took me down twice, meaning I was just exhausted twice. And the third time, I'm not sure I had the strength to get back up because this was, I've never experienced anything, you know, such as this of you know, the, you know, the verbal abuse and just the kind of at me constantly. And so it was, a journey of making peace with my decisions in general, not only this one, but just, making a decision and being okay with it regardless of other people's views and opinions.
You picked up one heck of a stray cat. I mean, and it's, self-love usually forbids that, and this is a phrase from a book called Time Enough for Love by my favorite science fiction author, Robert A. Heinlein. And he said, it was like picking up a stray cat, and you can't just abandon a stray cat once you pick it up. And his phrase was, self-love forbids it. Who we perceive ourselves to be would not allow him to let go of what he had picked up that he called a stray cat. It sounds like that was the struggle you went through as well. What kind of a person would kick out their foster daughter?
Well, exactly. And also it's just like, that's when, you're bored kind of, I call it the crazy train, because then the self-doubt comes in. It's like, well, I'm not trying hard enough, blah, blah, blah. And so, so I'm just trying to think time-wise. So then, that all kind of ended, and we moved, and then I moved to a different community where I was working and had a different job at a different nonprofit. And I was providing support to a grandfather, and I knew his granddaughter, who was also a teenager. I love teenagers. Was going to go in.
Bless you.
Yeah, who was going to go into the system, and I was just kind of sitting with it. And so I was grocery shopping, and two social workers on a Friday night, said, "Hey, Stephanie, like, can you take her?" And I was kind of done at that point in time, and and I thought, shit, oops, oh, we're after hours. If I don't take her, she's going to go into the valley, meaning into kind of a deeper population, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. And so I knew with this one that she was kind of my other wild child, that she didn't need to be parented. She had already been a parent. She needed to be housed. And I thought, okay, I think I've been through the worst, and, we'll make it happen. And, and it was great, because when she showed up, she's just like, okay, what are the rules? Right. And I'm just like, well, I don't know, like, number one, because I just renovated this house, right? And I said, like, you don't do damage to the house, and you don't damage me. The rest is negotiable, like, whatever. Right. And, yeah, and so her and I, she's been out of, my house for over 10 years. And, I've been blessed with a grandson who's just over a year. And so, it's beautiful, because I never wanted to have children. So from my perspective, life was painful and a struggle, and I didn't want to put my own kids through it. So, I was blessed with, when I met my ex-husband, his kids were 7 and 5. And then my first foster daughter, she came when she was 11. And then my second came when she was 13, right? So it's kind of neat having the blessings of raising other people's children. And I don't think I would have had that privilege and honor if I would have, had been with someone else to raise my own children. And, and really, like, my heart is full. Like, I have no regrets. And, that was another one, at the end of my 30s, being single, and it's like, oh my God, am I meant to have kids? And the judgments, and people, saying, well, Stephanie, like, can you have kids?
Oh, and your biological clock is ticking.
Well, yeah, and I'm thinking, I assume so. Like, there's no returns, right? But I still had my stuff to go through, and I didn't want to, transfer that onto my kids.
Oh, well, this is perfect. I do trust the scheduling genie, because I had no clue when we booked this slot that, as you may have heard, there was a schedule change. And so it ended up where the person right before you was talking about healing generational trauma. And that was like, oh my God, what a perfect setup for this conversation about how you become a stranger to yourself. Yeah. And then how do you get to know yourself?
Exactly. And Jackie, I mean, I've got notes on all of your speakers, and I thought, oh my God, what am I even talking about? And then with Antoinette, I thought, oh my God, like you segued me in. And
the booking meeting.
Exactly. And yeah, she talked about Atomic Habits. That book has been coming to my attention as well. So that's something on the list. And yeah, so that's something. So even, well, I could go either way, but even for you, when you were talking about should-vil and shame, and if we look at David Hawkins' kind of level of consciousness, this is how I interpret it. Like, we've got a ladder of feelings with shame being at the bottom. There's nothing after shame. And, from my perspective, shame is the ultimate. It's I am a loser.
It's different than any other emotion in that it is based in the label and the self rather than the experience.
Exactly. And there's nowhere else to go. And for me, when I can start, seeing it, sensing it in people, especially, people I know, that if there's other behaviors like an isolation, it's like, okay, and even right now with COVID, with the isolation, it's like, this is forcing people these times to look within. And, we have been so distracted that there's a disconnect. And, I mean, I don't even watch the news. I can't even watch the news. I'm sensitive. It's like, oh my Lord, like it's hard.
You might be sensitive, but you make a choice. So you are strongly sensitive in that you've chosen what you allow into your realm of awareness.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, possibly the greatest gift of getting to know the person in the mirror.
Yeah.
Is that when you get to know yourself, then and only then can you make the decisions and the choices that are right for you.
Exactly. And I think it was Elizabeth from earlier. I can't remember which speaker was, but it's like you follow your energy. If what I'm doing or who I'm around, how does it make me feel? And that's part of the getting to know yourself is we stop running a default program.
Yes.
And start tuning in to, what gives me energy, what takes my energy away, what fulfills me.
And that's really key, noticing that. And I'm going to argue, it's not possible to be aware of your energy until you get a clue to be aware of yourself.
Exactly.
And this has been an ongoing point of pain for me as I work with my own private clients and work with them to become more self-aware. My work is reconnecting body, mind, spirit, and emotion. And the number of people who, when we're working a process and it's, where in your body are you uncomfortable? And they're like, in my mind. And I'm like, ask it again. When you scan your body from head to toe, where in your body are you uncomfortable? In my head. I mean, there's just a real large gap between their experience of being human and all they can relate to is their thinking mind. And that's such a small part of us.
Exactly. And Jackie, I mean, I think we do similar things. We just go about it differently. Mm-hmm. But what I've come to realize, for a few people, they're not aware of feelings in general, right? They're kind of cut off here.
And they say I feel, and they might even be able to get an emotion word into the sentence.
Yeah.
But there's not a physical experience of
it. Exactly. And so it's kind of like back to basics about awareness, right? Like, when you notice or when you see something, like what senses come forward?
It's a conversation that's becoming more and more needed. And that's why I was like, yeah, let's talk about getting to know the person in the mirror, because there are people who cannot even engage in that conversation. They are, it's like they're not even aware that they're unaware, that, it's like, whoa, okay, you can't start on a trip to a destination and create a map without two pieces of information. One is where you want to go, but the other one is where you're starting from.
Yeah.
And so I love the idea that there's a path and a place where people can start to discover who is this person in a mirror.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Sandy Queen was a platform speaker, one of the first female platform speakers I ever heard give a presentation. And she said, when you look in a mirror, and she worked with teens in challenging situations. So she worked with what we now would call an at-risk group of kids.
Yeah.
And she said, if you look in a mirror and you don't see your best friend looking back at you, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
And that was her attitude. And I didn't realize until just now just how that impacted me. And now it's really strong language, since I'm working in the realm of teen suicide prevention, to be able to stand on that certainty and to say, if you can't see your best friend looking back at you, you're not going to make it. And
no, exactly.
That's, like heart-wrenching for me. It's one of the reasons I don't work with teens. So God bless you for the fact that you do. Anyone who is willing to walk that walk, I think realm of angels. And I know you also work with adults, because that's one of the ways that we know each other. Thank you very much for that as well. Let's go into something really practical.
So actually, Jackie, I just want to pick up with what you said about making that best friend in the mirror, and that's where an easier step is, when you look in the mirror in the morning, what are you saying to yourself? Because that is setting up the rest of your day. Like, are you looking in the mirror and nitpicking kind of, how you look, or are you going, you know what? Yeah, this is how I look, and you know what? I'm going to put a smile on. I'm going to, whatever. Like, wear your favorite jewelry. Wear something to make yourself feel better.
If you're not, okay, so that, let's presupposing that you wake up, you look in the mirror, and your first thoughts are less than best friend, unconditional love, and acceptance.
Yeah.
So starting from that premise.
Yeah.
Step one is be aware of what you're saying to yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to say it out loud for it to be heard loud and clear.
Yeah.
So being aware of what you're thinking when you look at yourself in the mirror first thing in the morning, you're right, that does kind of set up the day. Yeah. There's a lot of unconsciousness in how we are living that I'm looking to change. I mean, that's really what this conversation is about, because we're unconscious, we're unaware of what's going on in our own heads. And then we think we're going to be savvy enough to figure out what somebody else is going on with. There's a reality check here. And that's why this conversation is so important to me. I don't think it's possible to recognize signs of someone else being at risk if you can't recognize who you are in the mirror.
Exactly. And have that honest conversation with yourself. right? And I always, kind of use the stick as the metaphor. So when we grow up, whoever our primary caregivers are, you should blah, blah, blah. And so what happens when we leave, this being the stick we take with us and beat ourselves over the head, right? Like, I should have been able to kind of figure it out with my first foster. I should have been able to, keep going, and that's the part of cutting slack on ourselves and just go, you know what? I'm doing the best I can in this moment. And, that's kind of another thing I say to people is appreciate yourself. Like, find one thing. Gratitude is something different, but self-appreciation. And, usually when I start with people, I will say, I want you to go get, I don't care what you get, a box, a jar, something. And every day, I want you to put in there a note about what you appreciate about yourself. And really, Jackie, sometimes to just kind of witness how hard it is for people. I mean, I have deepest compassion because, what, I was that, and I get it. But really, get that kind of list going every day, a little note, because when you have those crappy days, you need something to fill you back up.
So the jar of appreciation is where you can go on your worst days and reconnect with what's so good about yourself.
Exactly.
What you appreciate about yourself.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that. A self-appreciation jar. All right.
So it's very different. I mean, I see it very different from a gratitude jar, right? Like, that's the deep work of connecting to yourself.
Okay. So deep, the whole genre of connecting with yourself can be considered deep work. This one exercise is not. This one exercise is something that is simple. Anyone can do it. If you don't have a jar, you got something that you can gather up some pieces of paper in. Yeah. Most of us have plenty of scrap paper. If nothing else, the envelopes from your mail can be used.
Exactly.
So this doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take it doesn't take a lot of talent, and it doesn't take a lot of treasure. So super, super simple. The question is, will you trust yourself to do it?
Well, exactly. And kind of a disclaimer, like, that is a hard step for, some people, right? And just even that one step is a huge breakthrough for them. So I never dismiss, even though it's kind of easy when you haven't done it before.
It's simple. I didn't necessarily say easy. I said this is simple. I hope that's what I said.
Yeah.
A lot of people think simple and easy are the same, and I will tell you that is not the case.
Exactly. And you know what? And it's a great baby step, right? Because we're wanting to build that. We're wanting to make a momentum and build that.
So the first way to get to know the person in the mirror is to develop a daily practice of what do I appreciate about you?
Yes.
Is this a morning practice, an evening practice?
You know what, really, it just goes with your own scheduling.
Okay. A consistent practice.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't for me personally, I do what works for me when it works for me. So yeah. And then the other thing why it's coming to my mind is daily journal writing. So I always encourage people to journal write, and sometimes I can see that blank stare or whatever, and I will share my experience. When someone first told me to do that, I thought, are you kidding me? And I said, my first couple days, it'd be like, this has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever done. I don't understand what I'm to write about. And then suddenly, something just kind of flows. And, so first thing in the morning, I'm not working on 4 cylinders. Grab my coffee, sit down. I might, write about my dream. If I had a dream, I might talk about where I'm at in that moment. It might be this long, it might be longer. But for me, what that is I'm taking energy off of here onto there, right? It's no longer within me because it's an energy. It needs to be released. And to me, that's a healthy means of releasing it.
And we're not talking about, it's about venting, or about negative stuff. It's just about whatever is coming up for you.
Yeah. And, for me personally, I don't go back and reread them because I don't live back there, right? I'm going straight ahead. For me, it's in the moment of having a deeper connection with who I am. Where am I at in this moment so that I'm mindful of me. I'm mindful of my emotions. So kind of to go off of that, when we hit anger, yes, anger is an emotion, but there are steps that lead up to anger. And for me, I'm more internal than external, but like if I miss my feelings of hurt and my sorrow and my guilt and my fear, if I do not tend to those emotions, boom, I'm in anger. And so I teach people, journal writing is about being on top of your emotions, being mindful of how you're feeling, right? So it's a deeper connection to you in this moment. Quite often we get busy and disregard ourselves. For me, if I don't do journal writing in the morning, I might do it later, but I might not. Same thing as, my exercise. If I don't get it by noon, boom, it goes down my list. And so, the journal writing is about, that intimacy with yourself. And, some people go back over it, but really it's kind of more of a dump and just keep going.
I'm laughing because I have so many of the tools that I have created, especially since we launched the movement, that were written down in my journal first. And so I go back to those. Yeah. But, this was one of the conversations that you and I had, and I'm like, okay, we have to talk about this. And I'm grateful that you brought it up because I wasn't going to go here. I mean, I've been lugging around as I have moved and relocated. I've been lugging around boxes of old journals because I don't know how to let them go. And I keep thinking I'll go, because I can data mine some of it for what I'm teaching now. I'm like, I can go back and I realized over the course of the time since you and I spoke, I'm like, am I really going to go back and data mine those things, or am I ready to just accept the fact that I don't need to do that? And now what's recently and coming up in the things that I'm creating, like the suicide risk factor assessment, those books I'm keeping until I get those tools out into the world. Yeah. But other than that, I think maybe making peace with my past might include making peace with my paper. Letting my paper rest in peace. But we might have to come back to this at another time because I'm not so sure.
But Jackie, I'm just saying to you or reminding you, I heard you talk about Mark and his paper. Boom.
Busted. All right. It's every now and then there are two groups of people that create the biggest challenge for me. One of them is my children, especially my oldest daughter, who edited every single episode of my radio show and now handles all of the tech on my summits. And so she has a memory that is really, really keen. And she will call me out when I am saying something that is out of alignment with something else that I've said, or,
Could she be her mother's daughter? Just wondering. Could she be her mother's daughter?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. And then there are my speakers who I'm going to interview who lurk on earlier sessions of the summit. and call me out for what I said in a different session. So, all right. Yes. And maybe it is time. Maybe the reason that Mark is not energetically inclined to deal with his paper at my promptings might have something to do with the fact that I haven't dealt my own. Mine are much more organized.
Of course they are. I'm sure.
Which is laughingly, no, it's not true. So I'd like to believe that they look a little more organized, but it's just appearances.
You know, Jackie, I'm a paper rat. I've got baskets of papers, like might not look organized, but if you ask me for something, I know kind of which basket. But yeah, I mean, we take notes and just keep things, and I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Like you said, you took copious notes during the summit, and we do. And yet, that's part of getting to know who we are and what we are willing to own as far as our idiosyncrasies. And as far as what's more important, is it more important for me to keep this stuff for the day that I might look through it? Or is it more important for me to have the space?
And you know what, to kind of tie it back in, it is whatever you choose to make it, and it's on your terms, and you're at peace with it. When you're done, you're done.
When you're done, you're done. And that was actually one of the greatest things about the languaging that's been coming up in all of my conversations this weekend in this season of the summit is there are words like that. When you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
And accepting that.
Exactly. And before I lose it, it's also giving yourself permission to be, however, to be who you are, to feel, how you feel, to just appreciate who you are.
Got it. To feel how you feel, to appreciate who you are. So we've got the appreciation practice. We've got the journaling practice with no rules, just do it.
Yeah, and actually on the other, something else that just came up is quite often when we instill a new habit, which is usually change, the ego will come forward. Right.
And so I don't want euphemisms. When you say the ego, what exactly does that look or sound like?
So I sometimes refer to it as our survival self. That doesn't want us to change because it could be perceived as a threat, right? So it's about telling us to maintain the status quo, to keep us playing small, to keep us, safe, invisible, all of those things.
It's really funny because you said to keep us playing small, and yet I think I know someone who their ego is keeping them playing big. They want to downsize and not be so busy and all of this, and yet their ego is not allowing them to give up playing at the level they've been playing at for decades.
And Jackie, what I've realized is there's lots of things that, come into play. Like for me, some people could say, well, Stephanie, you hide out. It's like, yeah, I do. And for me, it's not so much, it's more than my ego. It's I'm still figuring out what that gap is. And this past weekend, I was in a workshop where it was intense, all about beliefs. And it was about ancestral beliefs that we're carrying, and to kind of bring Antoinette back into the conversation. It's, not only do we have our own life's challenges and traumas, but, I'm carrying the bloodline of my dad on my right, the bloodline of my mom on the left. We all do. And, there's inherited trauma that compacts our existing trauma.
Yeah, compounds and grows it like geometric progressions. Say more about the gap. Trying to figure out the gap is something you said just a minute ago.
Yeah, so that's kind of for me where I help people close the gap on where they are and where they want to be.
Got it. And yet you still are dealing with your own gap of where you are and where you want to be and figuring out what's in them.
Oh, definitely. Like, do I ever think I'll figure it out? No. However, what's important for me, especially if I'm getting into other people's lives, I better know what's in my life and the stuff I'm working on, right? And that's the beautiful gift, that I bring to myself when I'm working with clients, and I can smile and just go, oh, I recognize that, and have compassion for that, because that was me. And, not all clients mirror me, but to just go, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah, not either that was me. Oh, that is me. Okay. So probably you're in my treatment room. You're in my, I call it a training room. You're in my space because I need to hear what I'm about to say to you. It's got nothing to do with my clients sometimes. It has everything to do with I need to hear what I'm about to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and sometimes too, it's just like, you're stunned by the brilliance that comes out as a result of doing your own work.
It's an interesting place to be, Stephanie. So getting to know the person in the mirror, it's a journey not everyone decides to take.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's a journey that only we can take. No one can do this for us.
Mm-hmm.
And the best that we can do for other people is share our journey with them. And I just really appreciate you sharing your journey with us.
Thank you, Jackie.
Oh, you are very, very welcome. So we have the self-appreciation jar. We have the journaling. Is there another piece to this puzzle that we can add in on a self journey?
Just to kind of add on that, to understand that we are worthy as we are in our humanness. It has nothing to do with our doingness.
I'm glad you didn't say our beingness, because if one more person tells me about just be, I'm like, I am a human doing. I am not a human being, but
Yeah.
I can deal with my humanness. I appreciate that language a lot, because that's one of the things that I've had to learn, is that I don't fit that mold of that most people talk about. And that was my biggest self-acceptance this year.
And Jackie, I want to honor you for that you stay true to you regardless of what others are saying.
I do now. It's kind of a new skill for me. Yeah. Kind of a new skill for me. All right. There's been a lot of chatter in the chat box, and it's all around the journaling. So I want to tell you, if these two things are where you're good with this, we could so leave it, because apparently we have triggered something. No. Isn't that fun? So resistant to journaling is what I'm hearing. So you've got a gift that's going to make this easier for people. And so why don't you take us there?
Okay. Oh, Katie just put it in the box.
Yeah, that's Katie's job. She's really good at it.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the person's resistance to journaling. I'm not saying that the be all end all is journaling. I have someone else who, I have said, you know what, just doodle then. Like, really, it doesn't really matter what you use. It's about releasing that energy from yourself onto there. But having that connection, like to me, what I appreciate about journaling is we can actually write out our feelings, right? So it's a deeper connection. And there's something that happens when we, do pen to paper rather than keyboard. Mm-hmm. However, don't allow that resistance to stop you, then do artwork.
Yeah, well, let's not call it artwork because that strikes fear in the hearts of most people. So
Okay.
doodling is much safer.
Yeah.
Draw.
Doodling, color, like go get a kid's coloring book. Yeah.
There we go.
Just,
some kind of emotional expression on paper.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you kept that piece as pure, because I'm a firm believer that muscle memory, that the physical movement, even something as small as writing, is a release of energy, and that we often don't give ourselves permission to release energy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a releasing of the energy. Like from my perspective, it's becoming aware of our emotions. Like, you know, I want people to understand that you don't just go 0 to 100 for anger. I mean, it might look like it, but that when we hit anger, anger is really about hurt, you know, sorrow that we have not acknowledged. And so, you know, this is kind of something else. Like when we have a feeling that comes up, you know, or sensation in the body, I say, you know, like be the kind of the parent, and that sensation's a child. Attend to your feelings. Your feelings have feelings, and they have a message for you. You know, they're asking for attention, and when we don't give it attention, it's going to come out at the least opportune time.
That's a really interesting analogy that I absolutely love, because I'm going, oh yeah, you know, the feather, the stick, and the brick. I mean, you know, I think Oprah made that famous. If you get the nudge and you're not paying attention, then you get a heavier nudge, and then you get a heavier nudge. And that's, I think, exactly the way it is with emotions that we are not acknowledging. And acknowledgement is as simple as writing them down. It doesn't have to be you go talk to somebody.
No.
It's, you know, it's why our theme song is Have a Little Talk with Myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that wonderful space of just acknowledging. And you hit upon something I'm going to pick up on, because as was in the chat, someone thought journaling was a recap of the day, not what we're talking about, which is as a way of letting yourself just express whatever's happening in your head or in your body or in your heart. And I'm going, oh, I am so creating an activity now where I want one of my clients to journal not what she's thinking, not even what she's feeling, because we're so used to in our society to mix up thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask her to journal on what's going on in her body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this reconnection process that happens when you get to know the person in the mirror, you get to reconnect with all levels of yourself. And some of them maybe need a little more attention than others. But emotions are a big one.
You know, and just to kind of make a suggestion. So if she says, I don't know, then the response would be, what if you did know?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's
it
kind
pisses me off when you do that to me, but that's okay. Yeah.
To do what?
Yeah. I mean, I have had people tell me that and it's not what you do, because you don't say that to me. What I've had people tell me is that particular coaching device drives them crazy.
Oh, trust me. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, and it works. But it's just like a daily consistent practice of giving yourself some feedback, giving yourself a chance to pay attention to your feedback. That works too. Feedback is the fastest way to make a change in your life, is to give yourself some feedback on what's going on. And so journaling can do that. So we've got the 5 journal prompts for greater self-awareness. So in keeping with our theme, 5 journal prompts for getting to know the person in the mirror. There we go. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. I love you. And I love Katie. She saved me. I am not tech at all.
All right. So attitudes of gratitudes. I am grateful for you for being on the show and bringing all of this conversation, helping us bring to light what could be different for everyone's every day. Thank you.
And thank you, Jackie, for being you.